everyone. My name is Lydia Treadwell, and I am a Senior Learning Experience Designer with LSU Online and Continuing Education. And I want to welcome you to LSU Online's Faculty Showcase Series. For the uninitiated, the Faculty Showcase highlights the design collaboration between our learning experience designers and our LSU faculty in developing a fully online course. Throughout this series, we highlight specific course design and instructional strategies used by faculty for their courses. And today we have the pleasure of interviewing Dr. James Davis, an ISDS professor from the College of Business. James, would you like to say hello?
Thanks for having me.
I'm Courtney Hebert. I'm also a Senior Learning Experience Designer with LSU Online. And we're also joined by Dr. Andrew Schwarz, who is a professor also in the ISDS department of the College of Business.
Thank you for having me today. I appreciate it.
And thank you both for joining us. So before we get started, could you both share a little bit about the courses that we will be discussing today? Dr. Davis, you can kick it off.
Absolutely. So some of the courses that I've put together working with LSU Online, the first one's called ISDS 3107. It is one of the courses for our majors that gets into the technical side of the major. The course, we try to do any number of things to include demystifying technology, trying to help them learn a lot of the jargon and the terminology that we use inside our industry, and then also get into some coding, some programming, and some machine learning and data science piece of what they do, such that they leave that course with a foundation to get into some of our more advanced courses.
Lovely. Dr. Schwarz, would you like to tell us a little bit about your course?
Absolutely. Along with LSU Online, I've had the chance of working with them for a program in our MBA program focusing on emerging technology. It's actually a 4-course sequence, starting with the BADM 7050, and then is BADM 7401, 7402, and 7403. Now, these 4 courses together serve 2 purposes. One is for inside the MBA program, it's a concentration in emerging technology, but it's also a graduate certificate in emerging technology as well.
Can you talk a little bit about what current industry topics or emerging tech trends you cover in those courses that you just talked about?
Absolutely, and that's a great question. I think one of the hallmarks of the MBA program at LSU is that we're always progressive and thinking not only about what business is struggling with right now, but really looking forward to seeing what the challenges that organizations are going to confront in the future. When it comes to my research, I make sure that my research is embracing those topics and that I use those subjects to make sure that I'm aligning those expectations with what the students are learning. Now, at a practical level inside of my courses, how do we achieve that? Well, we do a lot of case study discussions where we talk about companies and we delve into why companies are reacting and reacting the way that they're doing. All of my classes have a component where we talk on Twitter and we interact on Twitter and we bring in the news of the day so that the content isn't static. So every day I'm interacting with my students and we're talking about what's going on in technology. All my classes have a component where the students have to go in and do a case study inside of an organization of their own choosing. And what that allows me to do also is, as I'm seeing what my students are reacting to what's going on in industry, it allows me to refine my own content as well and stay current with what technology trends and what workforce trends that we're seeing in today's business environment.
And Dr. Davis, what about you? What current industry topics or trends are you covering in your courses?
So through our advisory board that we have with the department, where we discuss any number of things to include what trends they are seeing inside the industry, take that information and we bring it back into the classroom. We use the Python programming language. We use it because it is indeed very popular in data science, and it's also used for app development. Any number of companies use Python, to include Instagram, Netflix, Google.
Over the last couple of years, we've really seen an increased need and demand for students to be workforce ready as soon as they graduate, and they want to find those jobs, they want to be placed. And there's honestly a gap in what they graduate with versus what their on the job behaviors and skills should be. So Andy, I know you talked about this kind of briefly a second ago, but could you share your insight on how you prepare your students for the workforce in your courses through the different experiences that they have?
Sure, absolutely. So I think there's an evolving conversation that we're having as faculty as when it comes to the role that certifications play in terms of higher education. I'm a big proponent in making sure that we never lose track of our goal as a institute of higher education to teach real enduring concepts. So we need to make sure our students are critically thinking. We need to make sure that our students have concepts that are going to last a test of time. But that's always a struggle inside a technology type of department that Dr. Davis and I are in. We're in an area where technology is changing, where 6 months your curriculum can be outdated, where a programming language like Python, like he's invested such a great job of working so hard on, in a year, in 2 years, that may not be a skill that's relevant anymore. So one of the big questions always is, how do you balance with what your student needs to know now versus what they need to know in the future? We have to realize that the statistic tells us that around half of what we teach our students is outdated within about 2 years. So we're trying to balance the near term and the long term, and that's a constant struggle. So one of the ways that I'm trying to encourage my students to be workforce ready is to align certification standards with what I'm teaching in the classroom. Does that mean that we're just becoming a certification industry stamp, or we're just stamping students out? No, definitely by no means is that not true. We're still teaching them the long term, but we also have to have a recognition that they need to be workforce ready on day one. And some of that means that we need to make sure that we offer classes that align with industry standards and certifications that really get them ready.
Dr. Davis, do you want to share a little bit about how you tackle this challenge of staying current and still teaching those enduring skills and abilities?
I try to listen. I try to listen to any number of things, such as, once again, our advisory board group that we have as part of our department. I try to listen to my colleagues on the feedback that they're getting. And then I also try to develop relationships with the students as they're going through our program, and then try to maintain those students once they graduate and once they move into industry.
So to expand upon this conversation just a little bit, can you talk about what types of activities or maybe the platforms that you use to give students these experiences? And maybe focusing specifically on how you're connecting students not only to one another in these projects, but also connecting them to other professionals within the industry. And I'll start with you, Dr. Schwarz.
That's a great question. So I think a lot of times we tend to think of online classes as a student it's almost like an independent study, where the student is just sitting and doing their work and kind of disconnected for everybody else, and that it's not possible to replicate the social kind of interactions that we have in the classroom. And I think that that's far from the truth. I think it's possible to replicate the same types of interactions that we have with our students online as we do in a face-to-face environment. And so I think that social presence is extremely important. So in the class, every one of my classes starts, and this was definitely with the help of the LSU design team, it starts with a discussion board where you introduce yourself, where the students can begin to network with one another. But then we move our conversations to Twitter. So I interact with them by tweeting multiple times a week, either through a direct message or through a group conversation. And those group conversations look very similar to what I do in the classroom. So what did you learn from the lecture this week? What did you learn from the assignment this week? And these are open-ended questions, and they're meant for them to start to share. And so what I see is, as over the course of 7 weeks for our online class, I'll see students begin to agree with one another and interact with one another. And so all of a sudden, you're starting to form these informal social networks, which would be the same replication as what we see inside of a classroom where a student would raise his or her hand to answer a question. So those kind of interactions are more organic. Now, one of the concerns always is, well, how do you make students interact in ways that are not organic? So I still do a group project the same way I would in a classroom. I do it online, because I think one of the real strengths, at least of the MBA program in particular, is we're creating a network. And that network is going to be enduring not only when you're in the classroom, but when you're out of the classroom as well. So as my last lecture, no matter what class you take from me, my very last lecture always has the same line, which is, it's been an honor being your professor, but please don't let the conversation end here. Look me up on LinkedIn and connect me on LinkedIn so I can continue to follow your career. So what I encourage the students to do then is to shift our interaction, not from within the confines of Twitter or Moodle, but more from an external platform like LinkedIn. And what I'm finding that allows is the students to look through and find other MBA graduates from LSU to create networks there as well. And at least several times a week, I'll get an email from LinkedIn to saying, hey, Dr. Schwarz, this is what I'm working on. Is there anyone else that you know in the MBA program or a former graduate that can help us out? So it's about really thinking about this from a pipeline perspective, which is how do we get the student in? How do you get those interactions started? How do you encourage those formally and informally? And then after, how do you give them that soft landing that encourages them to keep the connection not only to the university, but to one another after graduation?
And Dr. Davis, I know you use some slightly similar but different tools and platforms to connect your students. So if you wouldn't mind going ahead and sharing some tidbits for using those tools with us.
I'm very fortunate in our department that I get to teach 2 of our core courses. A lot of times they take those courses in one semester followed by the next semester. So a lot of times I will get students in the spring, they will go off and they'll do a summer internship, and then I get them back that very next fall. And that's great because we usually continue the conversation on, hey, where did you go? What did you do? What did you find useful from what we've taught you thus far? And what could be more helpful to you? One of the things I heard early on was communication platforms such as Slack. Most companies, especially technology companies, use a communication platform such as Slack. And if they don't use Slack, they'll use something else, something along the lines of Microsoft Teams. So I'm like, great, let's incorporate that into our class such that the students will be familiar with it as they go off into industry, as they're getting their internships, they'll already understand how those platforms work.
And I also know, I kind of want you to highlight some of the gamification that you incorporate with Data Camp in your 3107 class, where students get to be on the leaderboard and you share that out.
Students a lot of times will come into class and they'll say, hey, I found a resource, and it could be anything from YouTube videos to other types of platforms where you can go learn a particular skill. The one that I found the most useful and I recommend the most to students is indeed one called Data Camp. Data Camp was developed to teach data science. It uses the Python language, also the R language. The students that are working with databases, it also has the structured query language or SQL tutorials in there. But I do introduce the students to it very early on. I reference it any number of times throughout the semester. I also give a couple of assignments that do send the students to have to use Data Camp, but some students get access to it and they like the way that it's set up and they like all the tutorials and the knowledge that can be attained on Data Camp. So I do from time to time pull up what's called the leaderboard. I can see who's been using it the most, see who's accomplished the most on it. And once again, we'll challenge them. Hey, you want more, here's where you can find more, and then try to recognize the students that have been engaging with Data Camp the most.
Both presented some excellent ideas, so I'm sure others will want to be trying these out. So can you both provide some practical tips and suggestions to other faculty who want to align their coursework with the needs of their industries, as well as their students' future employers?
I think a lot of times we as faculty need to really just listen and understand that while our job isn't necessarily only for workforce development, we can't neglect the broader societal discussion that's taking place and the role of universities in broader life, and that workforce development is and will continue to be a component of what we're trying to accomplish. If you're in your particular degree program, reach out to those that are doing in practice what you are doing in the classroom. Reach out and see what they need. Reach out and see what would have helped their journey out. I think a lot of it is about listening, being present, and really understanding our stakeholders both inside and outside of the university.
As Dr. Schwarz mentioned, our industry changes frequently. There are times when I have taught some content one semester, and then the very next semester, a lot of that content was a bit outdated. So as I tell the students, the great thing about our industry is also the very frustrating thing about our industry is you constantly have to be learning and getting better. That if you kind of stop learning, the moment you graduate, then any of the skills that you've acquired will be outdated relatively quickly. When I say relatively quickly, maybe in a couple of years, and if not a couple of years, soon thereafterwards. So I like to challenge the students and then also kind of get them in the mode of constantly learning and providing them different platforms where they can continue doing that.
Thank you both for sharing. So we're going to move from course specifics to the larger experience of developing an online course. So what would you tell a faculty member who was unsure or on the fence about designing or teaching a course with LSU Online? And Dr. Schwarz, we'll start with you.
All right, so I'm actually going through my 7th course right now developing for LSU Online. So I basically spent the last 2.5 years of my life dealing with this. So I think I can speak a little bit to this process. Now, as a faculty member, one of the big challenges as you start to think about it is it all seems so big. It all seems so overwhelming. How am I going to take 15 weeks if it's a 15-week class? How am I going to shrink into 7 weeks? This seems like it's daunting. The first thing is relax. They have a methodology for this, and the methodology works.
I had to give myself permission to make bad content before I could finally get to making good content. So Dr. Schwarz had mentioned it's an iterative process, and it absolutely is, because when you first start off, just making videos, if you've never made lecture videos before, when you start making content you're going to put online, I doubt anyone is straight out of the box really good at it. So for me, I had to be bad at it to start getting better at it. And I'm never going to say that I'm really good at it, but I am much more comfortable with it. And the current iterations of it are absolutely better than the first iterations of it. So I found that helpful, just once again, to give myself permission to make bad online content in order to get to the better stuff. Also, working with LSU Online, you're paired up with an online learning expert. Once again, listening to them and then letting them help you take your course and move it to an online platform. And what I mean by that, when I started off with my online consultants, it usually started off something along the lines of, tell me about your course. And then I would just start talking about my course. And then we'd start talking about certain lectures. And they tell me, how do you do this lecture? And I would tell them how I do this lecture. And I would say stuff like, hey, this is how I do it in the classroom, but I don't think it would work online. And then usually the consultant, if they didn't have an immediate solution, they would say something along the lines of, let me think about it. I may have a solution for us. Let me look into something else. And the next time we would come together, they would present something to me. I was like, wait a minute, that's such a great idea that not only will it work online, but now I want to take this back to my on-campus class and use it there also because it was such a good idea. So my advice would be meet with, listen to your online consultant that you're paired up with, and they really will help you put together not only what's going to eventually become a really good online course, but they're going to give you some spectacular ideas that may work very well in your on-campus course.
And Dr. Davis, I would let you go first for this one last question. So if you had to identify one main benefit of working with a learning experience designer from LSU Online.
Working with LSU Online and being paired up with a partner to develop an online course has made me better at doing the on-campus versions is one of the main benefits. It's also produced reusable content. I can refer them to some previous information that I've created. And as an example, we had a grad student, one of our PhD students, that was going to be teaching a course this summer that he couldn't teach it. Turns out that he they had a family issue, and then he had to leave. He had to leave the program. When he left the program, and then I was asked to step in and teach the course that had been scheduled for him, I had some other engagements. I had some other plans where I would not be in town and I would not be able to teach it in a traditional manner. We were able to quickly transition that course because of the content that had already been created. I could do a little bit of on campus. I could do a little bit of Zoom, and I could do a little bit of pre-recorded content. And we already had that content. And that's one of the great things that having worked with LSU Online, it made it better. It made me more versatile. It made the course more versatile. And I think it makes our entire department and our entire campus more agile. I ended up teaching 4 courses this summer, which is a load. And I was able to do it because of LSU Online and because I'd already created a great deal of content. And then, other courses that I've taught where someone's like, hey, I'm struggling with a concept. And I'm like, I have a recorded video on that. Let me give you access to that video. You watch that. And then if anything's not clear, come back to me.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. So Dr. Schwarz, what would you identify as the main benefit of working with a learning experience designer?
Working with LSU Online at the program level has ensured that the student experience is the same from class to class to class. The student knows what to expect. So I think from the student's perspective, that's fantastic because it allows them to know where's the syllabus located? Where do I find office hours? They know basic information. They know where to find it, and it's consistent. And I think that goes a long way for the student experience. So at the program level, I think that's one great benefit. As a personal benefit, a lot of times I love doing research. I absolutely love the job of being a professor. I've been at university now since 2003. So as this week will be about 18 years I've been here. Love the university, love the department, love colleagues like Dr. Davis. It's a great place to be. But a lot of times as a professor, I get so caught up in my own research. And because that's why I started to be a professor. And a lot of times it's easy as a professor just to take your syllabus and rubber stamp it from the fall to the spring and just change the dates and reuse the same syllabus. Even though technology is changing, the same basic content and just change things around the margins. And as professors, a lot of times we don't sit back and really think about what we're teaching and why we're teaching it. So one of the experiences that I really enjoyed the most about working with LSU Online is I finally got a chance to give as much attention to my teaching as I did to my research and really think about why I'm teaching what I'm teaching and how I'm teaching what I'm teaching. And so Dr. Davis had mentioned this before, I'm a better teacher in the classroom now because teaching online. And I'm a better online teacher because I'm teaching face-to-face. So there's a symbiotic relationship between the two, where when I walk in the classroom, my classroom experience is different, where I'm interacting in a different way with my students. I'm shifting actually my classroom environment to be much more of an active learning environment because I'm taking what I'm learning from lecturing online into the classroom as well. So I think a huge benefit at the local, for me personally, is that it's made me a better instructor and a better professor overall, I think, because of it all, because I finally thought about what I'm teaching and I'm very deliberate about what I'm teaching. I think for the university overall, we talk a lot about cannibalization and the fear that they're cannibalizing one with the other. I think the reality is that a lot of the students that we teach online will never set foot on the Baton Rouge campus or any other campuses across the state. We're reaching people that we would never reach if it weren't for an online environment. And that's deeply satisfying as a professor, because while I love research, I got into this job to change students' lives. And I want to change as many students' lives by giving them workforce opportunities as I can. So I don't care how I teach them, whether they're sitting in Beck, whether they're online, whether in Twitter or standing in the hallway. If I can have the opportunity to do that, that's a great thing. And so working with the online team is really, I think, allows the university to reach out and to really change not only the state, but the country and the world. I've taught students all around the world, and it's deeply satisfying to have that opportunity. I've always been grateful to LSU Online and to the university overall for providing me with that opportunity.
We were so glad to get to work with you on your courses, and we thank you both for joining us today. We appreciate the time that you took to speak with us about your experiences and hope that this will be helpful to others that are either on the fence about LSU Online course development or just are looking for some ideas. Thank you.